as we take different criterion or different proverbs, the proverbs themselves may seem to be very similar to things that we've gone over, or things that repetition isn't simply for the sake of repetition. There's always something there. It's adding another layer. It's adding another dimension of the whole. And so it's really important that as we go through these things, we don't, you could say, not phase out, but kind of tune out, like, okay, so I've heard some of these things before. But we need to evaluate every single time, because we're tying in another aspect, another dimension, another criterion into the whole. Okay, the whole criterion. So very, very, very important. That's going to be exceptionally valuable by doing that. Okay, so we have Proverbs chapter 2 tonight, Proverbs 10, verse 2. Proverbs 10, verse 2. And we're going to be looking at verse 3 next week, and I need to look at the possible connection there. It's just it's too similar in structure for there not to be a connection. But I didn't get that far today. I got 5 pages in today of this. So in Proverbs chapter 10, verse 2, we have treasures of wickedness profit nothing, but righteousness delivereth from death. Now, this is going to take a little bit of adjustment for your eyeballs as far as your English eyes, because we read left to right. But if you go to the Hebrew text there, the red line, the red letters above the Hebrew, okay, that's the English literal translation of it, okay? So, and it's reading right to left in English, okay? So that first line reads, not will cause benefit, acquisitions of wickedness. And then the second line, and righteousness will cause removal from death. Okay? And what I've done beneath the Hebrew lettering is I've put the whether it's a noun, whether it's a verb, what type of verb it is, all of the grammatical elements there, so we can see how it's structured. So here for a descriptive literal translation, and to be clear, the descriptive literal translation is not trying to replace the King James, okay? But this is simply a descriptive literal translation. So we have acquisitions of wickedness, not will cause benefit. And you can see that I've added from life, and there's a reason. The second line, and remember, we've talked about words that have been left out, right? They're to be understood. So those words acquisitions of are understood in the second line, and acquisitions of righteousness will cause removal from death. Now, I've mentioned it before pertaining to how the Lord designed his parallelism to leave out understood words that are to be understood, that they're there although they're not written. By doing so, you get a much, it's really incredible. Okay, so let me back up. The syllables, that's the word that tripped me up last time too. If you, as it's written without the understood words, there is 8 syllables in each line of the Hebrew. 8 syllables. And then you start counting the English translation. Treasures of wickedness, profit. No, there's 10, right, in that first line. So there's a lot said in very little. Once again, the descriptive literal translation, acquisitions. You can see where they get the word profit from. So that which is gained, right? So that which is acquired, that which is received. You're receiving growth of something, right? So acquisitions or profit of wickedness. It will not cause benefit. From what? From life. Notice, And I want you to look at these key things. There's a reason I'm going this a little bit in depth here at the very beginning, because I want to start training our eyes to be able to see these things a little bit, or at least understand. In the King James, there it states, treasures of wickedness profit nothing. And then they have the word but there. So the translators comprehended that this was contrasting parallelism. So they made it very easy, very plain in the English to see that it is contrasting parallelism. Even from stating profit nothing, and then the contrast, delivering from death, will profit nothing of what? Well, life. It's the contrast of it. But if you look in the descriptive literal translation, it has acquisitions of wickedness not will cause benefit. And then the verb underneath of that will cause removal. So the not there, the negative and the positive, indicate that this is a contrasting parallelism. So very, very neat how the Lord put it together. So just want to point out a few things there, because our mind does need to dwell on these things. But this is really interesting. Acquisitions of wickedness, you could say, will not cause benefit, but the not is a separate word in the Hebrew. So not will cause benefit, or you could say will not cause benefit from life. So you have benefit and removal in contrasting parallelism. And you can kind of see that, can't you? So benefit, so that which I have. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me back up. No. Yeah. Benefit, something that's profited, and then something's removed. Right? So you have that gaining, and then you have that removal. So you have a contrasting concept there. You have life and death contrasting there. And then you have wickedness and righteousness on the far left contrasting there. And I think I misspoke earlier. Acquisitions is where they get the concept of treasures from. Treasures of wickedness. Acquisitions of wickedness. So what is that which is acquired? It's the treasures. It's that which the individual is thinking is something that's valuable, because their thinking is contrary to the mind of God. So that mind is going to have a different value system than God. They're going to live in accordance with their value system, which is contrasted from God's value system, and they're going to gain to themselves treasures. They're going to acquire things, right? So the acquisition. So you can see where they got that concept there. So I messed up earlier and said acquisitions and profit. It's acquisitions and treasures there, and benefit and profit are it could be translated either way there, benefit or profit. You can see that there. So this is a really incredible, all-encompassing proverb. So in this proverb, the Lord gives us, now we can't forget that. This isn't just some saying to live by. This is a saying from God that perfectly represents his mind, his thinking, the design of all that exists. It's that which rules. So, in this proverb, the Lord gives the effect, the aftermath of adhering to his design criteria that he, the creator, has established. So if he established it, that's where its value comes from. And in contrast, the effect, the aftermath of adhering to one's own design criteria, or one's own wisdom. So acquisitions of wickedness not will cause benefit from life. Oh, and that concept of life is really important, because you could say, well, wait a minute, look around. There's a lot of people that claim to love God but really don't follow his way, and they're living it up. There's people that hate God with a passion. Man, they're living it up. So how can that be true? Well, we have to comprehend God's definition of life here. Once again, can we expect to take our natural humanistic thinkings and apply it to God's proverbs and comprehend it the way God designed it to be comprehended? No. So we have to be very, very careful. So before we come to his proverbs, we have to ensure that our mind is submitted to his design criteria, to his thinking. So this is contrasting parallelism. And what is that? The thought or truth expressed in one line is basically the same as the thought or truth expressed in its parallel line. But the lines express their truths using words and ideas which are opposites or in contrast to to their corresponding parallel elements. So, meaning, it is God's design that the treasures of wickedness profit nothing. That is God's design. And it is also God's design that righteousness delivereth from death. That is God's design. It's looking at two sides of the same coin. Okay? One's positive, one's negative. Okay? Very, very important there. Okay, second page. The Creator has delegated to each human being a sense of authority to exert in one's life. But there are manners in which one's authority is displayed. The God who exists didn't simply create in each individual person a sense of authority to exert onto others however they see fit. This would be utter chaos and destruction, as every man would be doing that which was right in his own eyes. And at the bottom there, Proverbs 21:2. Every way of a man is right in his own eyes, but the Lord pondereth the hearts. You also have Judges 21:25. States, in those days there was no king in Israel. Every man did that which was right in his own eyes. Right? But that would be utter chaos. And from before the very first physical act of creation, being that God is not the author of confusion, and we see that in 1 Corinthians 14:33, for God is not the author of confusion, but of peace. That word peace is completeness. So, but of completeness, as in all churches of the saints. So, God is not the author of confusion. The Creator had a specific design pertaining to each individual aspect of his creation, which never changes, as it is a revelation of who he exists. And we'll just read one footnote here, Malachi 3:6. For I am, that word am is italicized. See that? So that's standing for an understood verb of existence. So, for I exist, the Lord. I change not. Therefore, ye sons of Jacob are not consumed. So, God does not change in any manner. Now, so we're starting right at we're going back to the very foundation of the issue, and we're going to work our way up. So, every human being is born with a sense of authority. God has given, He's gifted, He has delegated to each individual that a finite form or a finite amount of authority. But He's given it to man for a specific reason. He didn't just give it to man so that man can be born and do whatever man wants to do with it. Once again, because that would just be absolute and utter confusion. Is that not what we see today? This is why people can't get along. This is why families fall apart. This is why neighbors can't get along with each other. This is why the nation is at odds with each other, right? Everything is complete turmoil. And this is why. So if everyone has an element of authority, if God has given it, then it's man's responsibility to recognize his need to go seek the instruction of the Creator, the one that gave him that authority. And see, this is the foundation as well as evolution as a whole, or atheism as a whole. We recognize we have this authority, but we refuse to put it at the feet of whoever created me. I desire to be my own authority, even if it's going to kill me. I'm going to be my own authority. Okay? So, second paragraph here. The humans were created and were not the creator. Thus, those who are the created are not the deciders on how to use the authority that the Creator gave them. Rather, they were designed by the Creator to seek to comprehend the Creator's design for their use of their delegated authority, just as the Creator had perfectly instructed them. When are you not using that delegated authority? Sure, but when are you not exerting your authority that God gave you? Okay, so So whether you're doing it accurately or inaccurately, at what part of the day, is there any part of your day where you are not exerting your authority in some manner? You're not. You're always existing authoritative, right? You're seeking to exert your authority, whether positively or negatively, whether accurately or inaccurately. You're always seeking to push that authority, right? Man can't help it. Even if the individual is submitting to something and doesn't come off as authoritative, but they are that delegated authority, they are deciding for themselves to submit, either accurately or inaccurately, to another person, another being, or something, right? So even if somebody comes off as submissive, it's still their own authority that they deemed it right to do so. Okay, so there's not any part of any day where we are not exerting or using this delegated authority that God gave us. So the reason I say that is that our minds have to be constantly evaluating the design of God for the authority that is in my use. See, it's not a point in time when I have authority and a point in time when I don't have authority. So at certain times, I need to seek God's counsel and wisdom, and the rest of the time is mine. See, it's not that. That's an abuse of the authority that God gave you. But we are at all times exerting that authority, which means we are to consistently and constantly be aware that our authority is under the authority of Almighty God, delegated by Him, and I must use it in accord with how God gave it, and the purpose that God gave it. Okay, very key. Okay. Without seeking the Creator's design for their authority, man is left to the destruction and confusion that he himself will bring upon himself, his family, and every relationship that he has with any part of God's creation. Animate or inanimate, whatever it is, every action of his will be destructive to the degree that he is in rebellion against his God, because he'll be abusing that authority. Now, once again, we're going back to Genesis 1:26. So where does this authority come from? So, meaning, let's make sure we comprehend why we're starting here. So you have the treasures of wickedness profit nothing. What does that mean? That man is deciding for himself that he is the authority to view something different than how the Creator views it. And so he's going to value wickedness, and he's going to go acquire wickedness. So he's saying, I have the authority to do so. You see that? So this is an authority issue at its very core. So that's why we're looking at this. Genesis 1:26. And God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion. See, and let them have dominion is giving the parameters of that image and likeness. You see that? So that dominion, that stewardship, that's the parameters of how we're to be in His image and likeness. And notice it's not Yahweh's image and likeness, but it's the title God, which means His power and authority. So we're created in an image as according to the likeness of God's power and authority. That's what He's delegated to us. It doesn't mean that we're all little gods. Right? We're not created in the image as according to the likeness of the God who exists, right? As far as Yahweh, but according to that descriptive title God, meaning Elohim, His power and authority. So we really have to know what we're talking about. And a lot of people don't, and it leads to great error. So let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea. So there's the water. Over the fowl of the air. Okay, well, there's the firmament. There's everything above us. Over the cattle, okay, animals, over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. So that literally covers every aspect of the creation that we were placed into. So God created everything that exists, and He put man inside of criteria that is already established, a design that is already operating, and man is put inside of that to steward and to be authoritative according to the image and likeness of his God. So that really demands that that man and that woman really seek to know their God so that they can do that, right? So, top of page 3. In Genesis 1:26, the word and, so we just looked at that, right? And let them have dominion. That word and is connecting that first part and the second part, part A and B, indicating the manner, or you can say the parameters, of which we are designed to exercise our God-given authority, our stewardship. The parameters, see, we have to be careful with that word authority too, because as soon as we exercise my authority, no. Our stewardship. That stewardship is authority, but the word stewardship also gives that concept of you are not the owner. You're responsible to the owner for stewarding exactly how he wants you to. Okay. The parameters of our God-given authority is to have dominion, stewardship over the entire creation. We have no authority in creation outside of interacting with it in the exact way we have been commanded to by our Creator. We as humans, from our errant and wicked heart, view ourselves and whatever we think as the authority. And therefore, we can do whatever we want to do. But mankind is made in the image of God, as according to his likeness. It doesn't matter if you accept him or reject him, if you believe in him or you don't believe in him. It doesn't matter. This design is not predicated on an individual. It's predicated on the very person of God. And he has designated to us a finite measure of his power and authority for stewarding his creation for the purpose of accurately representing him to all of creation, including humans. Thus, we are accountable to God for how we use his authority. And this is the very basic issue. Man has a choice. He has that free will in a sense, right? He has that free will to say, okay, I recognize that my God, I recognize that I am created by him, and I recognize that my God gave me stewardship in his creation, and it is my absolute responsibility to exist, to know my God, so I can accurately interact with everything that God puts in my life, so I can steward it in the perfect design that he's created me to do so that I may glorify my God. Or a man can wake up and just decide to do whatever he wants to do. And the destruction continues. Families will continue to be destroyed. Individuals will continue to be destroyed. Misery will continue. Even if they seem happy on the outside, misery will continue. It has to. Until we finally decide, okay, I'll submit my life to my God as he's created me to. The very first part of verse 26 reveals that he created man in his image and as according to his likeness. The word man here is translated from the Hebrew word Adam, meaning mankind. And this word takes in both male and female human beings. I've stated it before, but the word for mankind, Adam, and Adam, is the exact same word. There is a reason why the translators did not put here, let us make Adam in our image. Because in just the next few verses, they comprehended that incredibly important Hebrew parallelistic structure, which absolutely proved that the usage here was of humankind, not of the very first Adam named Adam. You see, these things are exceptionally important to comprehend. Much error comes from a rejection of knowing it the way God gave it. So, this word takes in both male and female human beings. Next, the word image is translated from the Hebrew word tselem. which carries the basic meaning of an image or a representation. Thus, its primary significance is that the thing described as a tselem is in some way a representation of something else. Though it can refer to a physical object, just as an idol functions as a physical representation of God or a god, the physical aspect of a tselem is not its primary significance. Other Hebrew words are also translated image, and these tend to focus more on the manner in which the image is produced. That is, focusing on the concept that the tselem was formed, whether carved, hewn, or even molded in some way. And it'll get into it in just a second. But this word image is not referring to a physical representation. It absolutely is not. We'll look at it in just a second, but the word pesel is the word that is used for an idol hewn out of something, a physical representation idol. This is the meaning of it on the very forefront. It's its major focus. Can involve a physical shape like that, but it's not its primary focus. If it was, then the Lord would have used pesel here, but he did not, which indicates that, once again, this concept of we're made in the image of God, meaning we all look like him in some manner, physically. No, God is not limited to a physical form or shape. He created all form and shape. How could he be limited to a form and shape when he created it? No, it doesn't work that way. So, the difference in focus between representation and manner of forming can be seen in the wording of the commandment recorded in Exodus 20 verse 4, where God prohibited the making of graven images. In that text, the Hebrew word is pesel, the same word used to describe the action of Moses hewing the tablets of stone for the commandments. Both tselem and pesel can be used in a good or bad sense. They're neutral. It depends on the context of whether it's a positive or negative. Dependent upon the item being formed and its purpose. When God formed a tselem, that tselem was a perfect representation of whatever he intended it to represent. When he created his human creatures as tselems of himself, both the male Adam and his female counterpart, his woman, were perfect representatives of the Creator's person and nature. Certainly, it's important, person and nature. Certainly, they did not and could not in any way replace his infinite person in his interactions with his creation. They were finite, limited human creatures whom he created specifically, not to replace him, but to function and interact with all else in creation in ways that perfectly reflected not only the supremacy of his person and nature, but also his personal relationship with every being and aspect of his creation. So God did not create mankind to represent him to the creation so he can go away from it and just sit back. So it was in no way to replace his presence at all. Okay? Humans, then, are representations of God in a way not found in any other created being. You see the great importance of representing God and not representing self-wisdom, one's own authority, one's own mind. Though each entity of creation possesses a will, meaning a desire, right? That will is defined and limited by the criteria of the Creator's perfect design. The Creator himself possesses a will, but his will is a free will, a will that is free to act in any way in accord with his person and nature, in accord with who and what he exists. Now, very important here, humans too possess the same free will, allowing them to act in any way in accord with their person and nature. But the difference is that humans are not the creator. They are created beings. That is, they are beings which were brought into existence by the Creator for specific functions and purposes. Thus, the Creator not only created them, he established within the bounds of his perfect person a specific set of criteria for human functions and interactions, just as he had established for every other thing in the creation. This was not a binding as conceived by those humans who resist and reject his design. Meaning, God's design is not the concept. Here's how wicked man thinks. Wicked man thinks, oh, well, I can't have fun. I can't do what I want. I'll never enjoy anything because I believe in God and that's just going to be boring. And you feel very limited, right? And you can't do anything. And people get mocked in that all the time. But it's that same exact concept of having a fence around your yard and you have a dog in it that wants to get out. Well, as soon as it gets out, it gets lost and it dies. So it has literal perfect freedom. It has a space perfectly prepared for it, where it will enjoy life as their life was designed to be enjoyed. It's perfect for the animal. You have food, water, you have that fellowship with humans. You have all of that. And all of that is lost when they gain their freedom, that they view freedom, which it's not freedom, it's death. You see that? So existing in God's design is not a jail cell or limited. It is absolute life. While those who, like that little dog, are looking outside of the fence, wanting their freedom, they destroy themselves because they're thinking errantly from the design they were created in. So very, very key there. So in that way, this was not a binding as conceived by those humans who resist and reject his design. These criteria formed an incomprehensible freedom within the bounds of his design for their existence. Within their perfect nature as created beings specifically related to and representing the Creator, humans are free to eat, drink, and enjoy the fruits of their labor. Go down to the footnote, number 4, Ecclesiastes 3:13. And also that every man should eat and drink and enjoy the good of all his labor. It is the gift of God. Another concept is you can have a man or a woman who's in a marriage, and one of them is looking to be freed from that relationship. And because they want to be free from that relationship, they start looking for companionship outside of that marriage. And when they finally get that freedom and they find another companion, all of a sudden they're heartbroken, they're destroyed, their family's destroyed, everything's crippled, their family is shot, all because they got the freedom they wanted, that they thought they wanted. But now they would give everything to go back, but they can't go back. That's the natural mind of man. What is that little saying? The grass is greener on the other side, right? So it's because of our very errant thinking. Okay. Humans, however, were not made simply to be representatives of the Creator. Each was also made to be a likeness of him. Though the two words may refer to one and the same thing, they are not synonymous. This word, demuth, is a passive form from the word dama, meaning to be like or to resemble, which refers to something which, when seen or perceived in some way, calls to mind the thing it represents or from which it originates. Accordingly, humans were designed to look like, to resemble the Creator and his design in their every function and interaction with everything else in creation. In this part of his revelation, God moved Adam, to use both words, selim and demuth, together in verse 26 in a synonymous parallelism structure to clarify unmistakably the nature of humans in relationship to the Creator. But listen, this is exceptionally important what we're covering right now. Incredibly important. We hear these words thrown out everywhere. Well, man's value comes from being made in the image and likeness of God. What? No, our value comes from the Creator. See, there's all sorts of definitions of what people have. When they say humans were made in the image and likeness of God, where do you think the concept that everybody has a little bit of God in them? You see, we don't really comprehend what this means, and it is to our destruction because it is absolutely important. It's fundamental. It's one of those fundamental building blocks that the rest of our life is built on. Bottom of page 4. Since a tselem, a representative, can misrepresent the one for whom it stands, Adam used the word demuth, likeness, to indicate that the representation was to perfectly reflect the person and nature of the God who built it. So I can accurately represent and I can misrepresent who God is. But by putting those two words together in that synonymous relationship, it perfectly completes the picture of what we are to constantly, at all times, to exist as. We are never to misrepresent him. You say, well, I can't do that. Did God command it? Then it's possible. Not in your own power, not in your own will, not in your own thinking, but in his. So we are to perfectly reflect the person and nature of God. That is what it means when he says that we are created in his image as according to his likeness. Which means this is the very foundation of our existence. This is what's normally missed, and this is why Christianity is now simply just a list of do's and don'ts. Each location has a specific list of do's and don'ts that if you look a certain way, you talk a certain way, you act a certain way, you are then deemed righteous by that assembly because of external do's and don'ts that may or may not represent the heart. That doesn't matter, just the externals. Why? Because we don't even know why we're here. We don't even know how God made us. You see, this has to encompass our mind at every moment. Okay, top of page 5. Due to the violations of Adam and Eve, each and every human being is born dead in death with a sin nature or a propensity to violate the design of their Creator, meaning each individual is born alienated from wisdom, and that W is capitalized, meaning the thinkings of God, right? Desiring themselves to be as God. So we're born wanting to be as God. That's what our authority is doing. God gave each one of us authority, and because of Adam's and Eve's violation, we are born immediately being our own authority and exerting that right from the get-go. Each individual is born alienated from wisdom, desiring themselves to be as God, the deciders of good and evil. As soon as children can talk and you try to listen to them explain something, what rules? Their mind, what they think, and this is what it is. Right? And it can be cute and it can be adorable sometimes, but it shows the problem that every human being is born with. They're not born evaluating everything by who God is. So, the deciders of good and evil, seeking to establish their authority as the authority onto everyone around them, and they are in need of the Creator's instruction of righteousness in order to submit their authority, each individual thinking, to the authority. And you have that footnote number 5 there. Proverbs 22:15. Foolishness is bound in the heart of a child, but the rod of correction shall drive it far from him. What if there's no rod? What if there's no instruction in righteousness? What if there's instruction in righteousness by mouth only, but not by action? What happens? It's going to be a mess. And the child, more than often, wants nothing to do with God. And if the child does, it's in spite of mom and dad. And there's much more to get into in that. But so, If a human continues to reject the Creator's instruction of righteousness, which brings life, meaning existence in accordance with the perfect design of the Creator, that human will continue to exist alienated from true wisdom, the mind, the thinkings of God. Meaning, it's wisdom, it's the mind of God that established how everything works. It establishes that which rules, and which rules is the mind of God. And so each individual is born alienated from that thinking. Being that man's wisdom is foolishness and brings him nothing but destruction, death, he will continue to destroy himself to the degree that he is rejecting the Creator as his authority, rejecting the design of God for the use of the authority delegated to him. Man's natural heart, meaning his mind or his thinkings. When it talks about the heart of man, it's talking about the true man. And so you could say it can be synonymous with his mind, but when it's talking about the heart, it's more talking about not just what he thinks, but what he thinks is because of what his heart is, of who he truly is. So they're tied together there. So man's natural heart, his mind or his thinkings, is absolutely wicked. Absolutely wicked. You have footnote number 6 there, Jeremiah 17:9. The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? And thus, when a human believes in himself, causes firmness to his own way of thinking, what he gains from it, what he benefits or profits from. Okay, let's go back and remember Proverbs 10 verse 2. Treasures of wickedness profit nothing. Right? So what he gains from it, what he benefits or profits from it, even though in his value system, those profits are worth living for and they are believed by him to be life, they in fact are of no value at all and only bring complete ruin, destruction, alienation as he is existing outside the Creator's design for human life. So footnote 7, Proverbs 14:12. There is a way which seemeth right unto a man. That's his natural mind. But the end thereof are the ways of death, alienation from God. But the righteous one, let's read the second part, but righteousness delivereth from death, or an acquisition of righteousness will cause removal from death. Why removal from death? Well, because we're all born alienated, we're all born dead. But acquisition of righteousness moves us from death into life. Okay? And that can be for salvation, of course, and in every single one of our thinkings that are errant, they're existing alienated from the thinkings of God, and each individual thinking is needed to be righted into God's thinking. So, but the righteous one, the one existing in the design of his Creator, as instructed by his Creator, constantly seeking to grasp and grow in the wisdom of his God, fully submitted to the thinkings of his Creator, is causing himself to be delivered from death, from an existence that is alienated from an accurate relationship with his Creator. Thus, once again, Proverbs 10:2, the treasures of wickedness, or they profit nothing, meaning they do not benefit, they will not benefit, they will not bring him life. He will not get life from it. A wicked individual will see things contrary to the design of God. His value system is contrary to the design of God. So he will acquire and acquire and acquire according to his or her personal value system. And they will think they're growing in wealth and they're becoming something, but they will not cause there to be any sort of benefit or profit whatsoever. But a righteous one, one who is in acquisitions of righteousness, will cause removal from death. So by rejecting that wicked mindset, by rejecting that thinking that has a value system different from God's, so from turning to that to turning to the wisdom of the Creator, it will cause removal from death In that sense, you are acquiring and growing in God's righteousness. I mean, what is righteousness? Righteousness is perfect existence in the design of God. I mean, remember, when God sees us, he thinks what? Literally, he thinks righteous. That's what he thinks. When he sees us, he thinks righteous, meaning perfect conformity with the design of God. Why? Because of Christ. See, so righteousness, the acquisition of righteousness is righting, it's straightening oneself from error. It's straightening in that perfect design of God. And so as we're acquiring that righteousness, and we keep growing and growing in the Lord and getting rid of those things that are contrary to him, it is causing removal from that which has no profit, that which is absolutely lifeless. On the back there, we won't go over tonight, but there's other verses that are pertaining to that word profit, and those verses are very synonymous concepts that I put there with this proverb here. Okay, there are different situations and different contexts in which that concept of profit and delivering, in fact, there's a couple in there with that concept of delivering tied together. That would be very valuable to help wrap your mind around the picture that's being given there. Any questions, comments, thoughts? Okay. All righty. Well, let's go to the Lord in prayer, and then we'll be dismissed. Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you and praise you for all that you are and all that you have given us. And Lord, we thank you that you have given us your perfect word, and that we can turn to you and seek your instruction and your wisdom as we reject our own, and we can continue to grow in life. Oh, Lord, we thank you for that. And Lord, we ask that you keep this continuously in our mind and help us to constantly grow and alter our thinking to be more in accordance with your thinking. And may we represent you accurately as you've designed us to. We ask all of this in your precious name. Amen.